Hi, I'm Dwight Yoakam. Welcome to my video bio that covers my greatest hits from the 90s. This may be your last chance for 1,000 years to see all of this.
Long road for him over the past 15 years, but Dwight looks back on it with pride.
I think, take great satisfaction in a lot of the things that I've done, and most things that I do or I attempt to do. But I think my journey's been about learning to accept something not being realized in an absolute sense. Allowing the conception of something to live a life that will exist up to the point that you begin to execute that conception, and allowing the executional phase of that to have its own life entirely. And then allowing the reception of that execution, of that conceived, bit of work, to have again unto itself its own existence.
Dwight Yoakam attracted a new audience to country music with a special blend of country and rock and roll. Dwight explains how he and producer Pete Anderson share a common vision when it comes to his music.
Decisiveness combined with a pretty large capacity for assimilation. I think Pete was one of the first people that ever observed that and articulated that, in his observation of that to me, and it clicked. I realized what he was talking about immediately. When we're in the studio, I think it works in concert with each other in a real harmonious way, in that he never tries to usurp my role as the artist. I mean, obviously there is a fingerprint that he carries, but it never
Dwight Yoakam, CMT's feature artist.
The Gap had approached us about using, interestingly enough, a cover song of mine that was the first hit single I ever had, Honky Tonk Man. The week they were going to shoot the Gap commercial, somebody there had a brainstorm. And they decided that maybe instead of using Honky Tonk Man, which was a country, song, quote unquote, a honky tonk song, what if Dwight cut Queen's Crazy Little Thing Called Love? Oh, this thing called love, I just can't handle it. Well, I happen to be a big fan of that song. So when they suggested it, I said, that could be pretty wild. That could be fun.
CMT's feature artist, Dwight Yoakam.
Dwight Yoakam has had phenomenal success during his 15-year career. He's sold more than 8 million albums, has won 2 Grammys, and has received 15 Grammy nominations. But for Dwight, it's his own personal satisfaction that makes it all worthwhile.
I really try to stay primarily focused on my own musical expression. And the obligations I feel with that have to do with personal obligations that I've carried with me through my life to family and friends. The primary catalyst for my performing music is the gratification that I receive from it initially myself. The fact that other people have enjoyed what I've done musically has been mountains of icing on that cake of gratification that I've taken from doing it.
Dwight Yoakam, CMT's feature artist.
And 1,000 miles from nowhere, we ended up going over and getting on a train and rode that train for mile after mile. It was about a 10-mile stretch of railroad that we could run the train down and then back it up. They'd take the train back, and we ended up with a helicopter out there covering a lot of it. It was a tedious shoot in that it involved, covering it from the angle up high of a helicopter, and there was some real peril involved for Carolyn and the camera crew that was in the helicopter that was shooting. There was, I guess, peril involved for me if I'd fallen off that train. It was moving in and out of the freight car. We were moving along a pretty good clip at points. I don't don't think we would have captured the elements involved in that without subjecting ourselves to the possible dangers of that environment. Being on an object that was moving, through time and space, but was a counterpoint to lyrics that were talking about going nowhere. Trains have been a big part of the folklore of this country and the continent being settled and people traveling on them. People kind of hitching rides on trains. It can be a metaphor for a lot of things in our lives. The editing of that piece was interesting in that Carolyn had done a cut because I couldn't get into the studio and couldn't get into the editing room, and she had prepared an assembly. And what happens often when you prepare things, you become attached to them and you like what you're seeing, and she did. And I went in then and did my cut. And we came back and she said, oh, wow, but I missed this and mine, I missed this and that. And I said to the editor, I said, you know what, let's put them both up on the screen for a minute, side by side. Let's watch and see where we end up. Just watch them simultaneously. And about 15 seconds in, 20 seconds in, I knew.
I've got bruises on my memory. I've got tear stains on my hand.
And right now, I couldn't tell you if I was forced to, whether the left side or the right side was my cut, because interestingly enough, we used the same shots sometimes at the same times, and we would marry into them in different ways and leave them in different ways, divorce them from each other in different ways. So it was a very interesting exercise for me, because art and artistic expression is completely and absolutely subjective. And that was an illustration of that point.
Time don't matter to me. I'm 1,000 miles from nowhere.
We'd never laid any plans for it to be a split screen video. But what I've found is that, the best laid plans are best, cast aside if something better presents itself. Everywhere in my life, and that tends to lend itself to adhering to a philosophy that I have about my life and about life, which I subscribe to, that's that I've referred to as momentary absolutism. And that means that everything is absolutely this way until it's not. In Pocket of a Clown, we had a problem with some sort of endangered species of butterfly at the end of the runway, believe it or not. I thought, wait a minute, if 747s that are blasting by here every hour, every day, aren't, destroying, how are these trampolines going to destroy? And we couldn't place the trampolines in certain places where we wanted to get them closer to underneath the fence because of the butterfly. But as far as I know, we didn't destroy any butterfly habitat when we were out there that day, and that was a major concern. Again, what making videos has taught me and has helped me in becoming a filmmaker, hopefully, is that you need to go gather a lot of elements. What you're doing there is you're putting the paint on the palette. You're gathering the paint, the elements of paint that you're going to then go into the room and use to paint the painting on the canvas.